one of the big pieces of commentary that I've seen around this is that aside from the actual financial values of projects, the thing that it does is that it gives the sector a bit more certainty about what's coming. So things like staffing up, things like making sure that the adequate resources in place, plans for our old friend AI and other things from a tools point of view, and getting sort of projects lined up in terms of internal delivery. There's a lot to be excited about here beyond just the pounds and pence value.
It adds meat to the bone, and it gives people confidence that it is being thought through. The more figures, the more stats, the more things we put around this, the more it solidifies. I've really good news, everyone. In fact, great news. We are now the only podcast to feature the managing director of the #1 marketing agency in UK construction right now.
Stop it,
Mr. Ryan Jones. Yeah, was that what you wanted me to say? Yeah,
It was close enough. I think you've earned your £10 there. So thank you, pal.
£10 book token.
Yeah, that'll do.
Fantastic.
No, thank you. It's we're all very, very excited by it. It's I think we'd kind of figured out we'd done well on the league table, but lovely surprise to see that one announced last week. So yeah, thank you, mate.
No
Actually, I
problem.
should stress that's not one of our 3 headlines for this week, is it? That is just that's a freebie.
Yeah, that one's just thrown in at the start, and full transparency, Ryan had no clue I was going to say that. So let's restart this episode and say, Ryan, how are you doing this week? This #1 thing aside, because I know that won't go to your head. How are you doing?
No, really well, mate. We've very, very British podcast opening that we've had for the last 3 weeks with the weather, but anyone watching this on YouTube will notice the sort of difference in location from my usual. But yeah, it's scorching in here. It's solar gain through these windows and everything. It feels positively tropical in Costa del Manchester. But I reflected in mood as well. I'm feeling pretty good. How are you getting on?
Yeah, it's similar. It's I was down in the smoky city yesterday, and it was a bit chilly. And then I've come up north, and it's warmer. So times are changing. Times are changing.
Yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't happen
clear
often,
where
mate, to enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. So let's with the weather update done. Now it's back to the news. First headline. It's over £700 billion worth of pipeline for UK infrastructure coming up over the next 10 years, which was a headline from New Civil Engineer. So, Ryan, what have we got here in this pipeline?
I thought we've got a pretty interesting one. The one thing I wanted to point out is that for anyone that's kind of followed the NISTA, the National, I've said the acronym now, haven't I? So I feel compelled in order to read out the full thing. The National Infrastructure and Service Transformation Authority. And that is the one and only time that I will be saying that in full in this podcast. They updated their list of live projects in the summer of last year, which was a paltry 530 billion for 780 schemes. So this update, fewer schemes in total, but an increased value where the median value of projects within there is 1 billion. So 718 schemes for a total pipeline value of 718 billion to be delivered over the next decade, which is an interesting thing going back to some of the other I guess pipeline stories that we've looked at in recent weeks. That we've said it, manufacturers reporting good things on the horizon. We've seen it from the consultants, we've seen it from the architects. Interesting to see it now on the civil side of things. We've touched on it before. Government being a good end client in terms of putting money where mouth is, particularly where a lot of these are things that are going to pay off beyond this parliament, and who knows where we're going to end up in terms of government by that point. So really, really fascinating one. Energy looks like the big winner. I think just over half of the pipeline value is in energy projects. But housing and regeneration is well covered within there. Transport and health all do very, very well. So I think one of the big pieces of commentary that I've seen around this is that aside from the actual financial values of projects, the thing that it does is that it gives the sector a bit more certainty about what's coming. So things like staffing up, things like making sure that the adequate resources in place, plans for our old friend AI and other things from a tools point of view, and getting sort of projects lined up in terms of internal delivery. There's there's a lot to be excited about here beyond just the pounds and pence value. Not that is to be sniffed at either. But if you had a chance to dive into this one.
Yeah, just following on from what you were saying, and I want to get on the acronym train here. So the CITB, Construction Industry Training Board, the ECITB, the Engineer Construction Industry Training Board, and others, apparently. And it's been analysed by consultants, whole life consultants, to get these figures in terms of workforce and the demand that's going to generate over 5 and then 10 years. And it goes up to 706,000 in total over the 10 years, with 2/3 of that being really construction focused, which is fantastic. I think what this article highlights is that it's not just like you said, it's not just the financial, massively important, but that can be skewed, and
Mm,
that can be, you know, a project that's going to be 8 years in the making, and for investors, you know, they might want to return a bit quicker than that, although we know infrastructure projects do take a long time. But so it adds meat to the bone, and it gives people confidence that it is being thought through. And the more figures, the more stats, the more things we put around this, the more it solidifies. And the good thing about this is, I can't remember the correct phrasing, maybe you can, but it's it's based on projects that are confirmed,
mm.
uh, that are further along than ones that are just being discussed, but potentially in Parliament or wherever that may be. So it seems quite a robust pipeline. Don't get me wrong; these things change, and 10 years is a long time, but there's a lot to be positive about it in this. From going back through previous episodes, not just 1, 2, or 3 episodes, but we mention it nearly every time in terms of workforce and upskilling and upscaling and getting people into the industry. Well, if a 10-year projection and 706,000 workers are going to be needed
Mm.
isn't a good solid foundation to say join the industry, that it's going to be plentiful, then I'm not quite sure what is.
Yeah, well, completely agree. I think we've spoken about it several times. The fairly, well, I'd say more than fairly, I'd say the unique kind of composition of the construction sector in terms of SMEs and sole traders and so on. There is so much work to go around. I think one of the things that we could probably do doing within the links is that there is a link out to the actual NISTA database. One of the things that I've seen praised is the level of granularity that they've gone to here, rather
Mm,
than just here's some headline stats or something buried within a kind of a broader, stuffy governmental white paper or big sort of database dump or whatever the case may be. Even for I was going to say a Luddite, but a semi Luddite like me, really, really easy to navigate website that you can cut the data by all kinds of things. So, if you're a contractor that can only work within a sort of geographical area, you can cut the data by that. If you specialize in a particular vertical, you can cut the data that way. If you're just curious to see the whole thing, it's all there for you. But yeah, just ease of use, ease of kind of understanding the level of certainty that it gives. The point that I was going to make on the sort of nature of the sector and its makeup, there is no one organization or type of organization that could possibly deliver this volume of work. So, one hopes on that basis that there is something for everyone, regardless of
mm,
size of your business or where you sit relatively in supply chain. So, yeah, it ticks a heck of a lot of boxes. I think for all of the many sort of valid criticisms of government, as we've said, one thing you can't fault this current government for is for investing in construction and for clearly seeing construction as a key driver to sort of economic
mhm.
growth. And yeah, this feels like another one of those positive steps on that. I saw oh, they'll have to forgive me because I can't remember who it was now to sort of give them the credit for it. But I saw a really interesting post on LinkedIn yesterday that the belief construction doesn't have a skills or labor shortage; it has a certainty problem. And I think things like this go a long way to answering that. If you are an employer, it's quite a risky thing to sort of make sure that you have a good, steady, permanent role to offer to someone if you're going to create that in house. And yeah, nothing guaranteed in this pipeline other than the pipeline itself. So yeah, at the very least, it gives people an idea of what the size of the prize looks like. And as I say, if you cut the data by what's appropriate for you and your business, you'll get an easy understanding of yeah, what's within grasp and what's going to be worth applying for. So really exciting. I also, again, sorry to ramble slightly, but given events in the Middle East and everything else, and not to get too sort of geopolitical, but um, personally, I think it's really exciting that the energy is the largest portion of this. Bringing really well our net zero targets and making 2050 feel a bit more tangible with the level of investment there, but also surety of our own energy pipeline. you cannot avoid at the minute headlines on, how people, gas price is going to be affected and petrol price is going to be affected and so on. Yeah, we have to have a better sort of pipeline, pardon the pun, of that stuff. So yeah, really really excited to see investment in that respect. I think that's a good thing for the sector and a good thing for the nation as well. So yeah, long may that continue.
And they've got an interactive map as well. So
Yes.
proof. If you needed proof if anything's going to work, it's an interactive map, But all jokes aside, on that, what they highlight is that there's sort of three key areas, and what this map shows is that the darker the area,
Mm.
the more infrastructure is in that pipeline for that specific area of the country. And they note London, obviously, West Midlands, and that's due to high speed, I think, high speed
Mhm.
rail, and Scotland as well, which is always a positive, not just to focus on England. So, and that's to do with onshore wind farms and spend in that area, which links to what you were saying, which is fantastic. And we sound sort of cohesive in this
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. No, I think so. It's I kind of it felt a little churlish last week to be talking about positives when well, particularly from a manufacturing point of view, given what's happening in the Middle East. I heard someone talking about Rachel Reeves' spring statement, just saying, is there any document that hasn't been dated as quickly as this one, given world events? And I said the same with my post on the S&P manufacturing PMI, that that survey was done prior to what's happening in Iran, and therefore, I'd be interesting to resurvey those same people and ask them under the circumstances how they now feel. But as you say, the fact this is a 10-year pipeline, we're looking into the long term. That investment is locked in. Yeah, this one gives me a bit more genuine optimism, a bit more sort of it feels more substantive, I guess, than some of the other parts of the sector updates that are maybe more subject to immediate macro factors. So, and
Mm.
please God that passes quickly, and we can all kind of get back to delivery. But as I say, this one taking a longer view in the nature of the projects involved, I do feel there is a bit more sort of substantive positivity to this one, shall we say?
And continuing on that planning theme, there's a really nice link to our next headline, and that's all about REBA calling for simpler, faster planning systems that protect design quality. This is in specification online, and we're acronym friendly today, aren't we? So this is this
I
is
was going to
the
say, do we perhaps need to produce like a glossary or an appendix with this of all of the various acronyms used in today's episode?
Yeah, that's coming soon. It's a glossary, and then we'll do acronym bingo, I think, at the end of the
Nice.
year. So join us for that episode. But yeah, so this is all about the government's consultation on the proposed reforms to the National Planning Policy Framework (NPPF), um, and REBA's response to that. But it's also REBA have submitted views on the draft design and placemaking planning practice guidance (PPG), um, it's interesting because there's some positives and there's some slight negatives, but they're done in the right connotation in terms they just want better buildings, better quality, and not just a base level, which we keep talking about, which we'll come on to as we dive into this story. What's your making of REBA's response to these then?
I think, as you said, to be honest, Pete, we've spoken about it a couple of times, haven't we? That this idea of removing opposition, that sustainability versus progress, or in this case, design sensitivity and placemaking and everything else, that we should try and have cake and eat it in that respect. And I think it's a very measured response from REBA, as you say. To start with the concerns first before we get on to kind of consensus. Some concerns about local authorities, particularly. It sounds like they're going to be blocked within planning framework in terms of going beyond energy efficiency standards. So that the national standard within building regs will be the default, and there will be no provision for local authorities to perhaps go north of that within their sort of tender requests. And what REBA are saying is that that power shouldn't be limited. I don't know how you feel. I'm slightly torn on that one. One of the things that I read recently was this idea of standardization as a means of building faster, that if there is fewer bits to be interpreted, and more of an equal understanding of what the sort of regulations require, whether you consider them to be a baseline or a target, at the very least there's less legwork to do in that respect. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I'm I see where they're coming from, but I'm a
Mm.
little torn on that one. I think if we've got a solid standard that works nationally, then let's make that standard good enough and apply it across the piece rather than building that sort of grey area in from the start, I guess. What's your thoughts on that?
You need a base layer. You need foundations. You need something. You need a number, a figure, legislation, whatever it might be, in terms of building regs or whatever you're talking about for that particular level. For me, as everything within construction, no two builds are the same,
Mm,
and I suppose no two regions are the same. You know, it's very different if you're building in the south to the north. In my opinion, yeah, you're building, but there are certain connotations that you have to consider, and certain areas as well. You know, more urban counties, more rural counties, and there's certain elements that I don't think you can have that base level that fits everybody, but you need some kind of marker. Um, I'd be disappointed if councils and regions are looking at this thinking we can almost get away with that low level. But on the same respect, I suppose what Reba stand for is that quality, and rightly so, they're pushing for better quality, but there's gotta be some kind of not ceiling, but y y y you know, the companies are there to make money, you know? So you've gotta cut it off at some point, but I think, you know, we're in the UK, you know, we're not in a country that's deprived and people are living on the streets en masse, and you're walking down around town centres with loads of people in real trouble. We have our own troubles, and absolutely, I'm not diminishing any of that at all. But we're not in that much of a bad place compared to certain countries,
mm.
and I think our standards should be higher. And we speak about that, and we speak about it from a marketing point of view, and it's the same from a building perspective. That yeah, I wouldn't like to see that foundational level, um, but if it gets people in homes quicker and it gets people, housed, which we need, then I think there's a good, better, best. There's certain levels, for certain types of people and units and families and, uh, yeah, the whole host. I
Yeah,
don't think there is one thing that works.
yeah. And maybe that's sensible, Pete, rather than giving every local authority carte blanche to create their own sort of guidance on that, or have the freedom to create their own energy efficiency standards or whatever else may be the case within tender. Perhaps if there is something for different types of accommodation being created that need to be adhered to. So universally understood, but then, as you say, some flex based on the
Yeah.
sort of makeup of housing provision and sensitivity, I guess, to the kinds of people that will be taking up housing within that particular area. So yeah, compromise and middle ground. I think yeah, I can see that
Mm.
working.
The one thing that I sorry, the one thing that I
No,
like
no.
they were proposing, two things. One, they made a point of highlighting, construction around rail, and
Mm.
making sure that that is done, correctly. So there are the right amenities. There are, it isn't just cram them in as tightly as you possibly can. And then on the back of that, the infrastructure provisions for different house building and development. And I think that's absolutely critical. And it goes back to the pipeline we were talking about previously. It's so easy to forget that when you're building houses, when you're building anything, that it's not just the actual building that matters, it's everything around it, and infrastructure's huge. So it's refreshing to see them look at that as well, and I think that does need highlighting.
Oh, would completely agree, and I mean, we'll touch on it more in our final piece, but yeah, but proper placemaking, as we said before, it's not just chasing empty targets from a house building point of view. So the government can pat themselves on the back, and so we can put some more money back into
Yeah.
industry. That would be lovely anyway. Don't get me wrong, but it's not an end in and of itself. I know. You know, the term urban regeneration has taken a bit of a kicking in recent years, and there's been some absolutely horrible examples of placemaking that we could highlight. And I saw, and this isn't a not remembering them to credit them. It's not to embarrass anyone, but I saw someone on again on LinkedIn posting about how terrible urban regeneration's been. Can anyone give me one example of this done well? And thankfully, lots of people had
Yeah.
lots of examples. Um, but yeah, again, I think they're absolutely right to highlight that plans to build things around key infrastructure, to make sure that things like health provision, education provision is in line with the level of space being created. I've seen all kinds of positive stories of planning permission being granted for new towns effectively across the
Mm.
UK. Thousands and thousands of homes within these single developments, and all of them, very well. It's on the face of it, very well considered from that respect. That yeah, it's not just lumping a load of people into an area. It's making sure that a life can be lived well within that space, and not forgetting what the purpose of this is in the long term. So, yeah, I think they're absolutely right to highlight that. And before I get onto kind of the list of positives that are in there and get a bit kumbaya, the other thing that they've mentioned that it's not a criticism as such, but a point for people to consider is on the design and placemaking side of things, that design code standardization, as we've touched on, and new tools for people within planning departments and so on. Principally,
Mm.
I guess is what they're alluding to. That can't compensate for under resource. So again, I can talk about it from a marketing point of view. I can see it in our world that lots of agencies, particularly the kind of big multinationals, headlines about the percentage of jobs being cut within those organizations, and AI being used as basically the reason why.
Mhm.
So I guess what Reba are getting into early there is that planning is a skill. It needs humans to be involved in it. You need to have these kinds of debates that we're having now on regional sensitivity and mix and all that sort of stuff. That yeah, don't see this new technology just as a means of cutting headcount. If we can use it to speed things up and to aid that process, then great. But again, it's not an end in itself, and there is a real concern there that if we start to sort of remove people from this process, that we're just going to create log jams that are unnecessary when everyone wants this to move as quick as it can, which I think is an absolute fair point.
Yeah. Moving on to our third and final headline, 'cause I think that's a really good segue into this one. What Reba is saying, how we're planning and larger scale redevelopment. Our last headline is the go ahead of 2,300 homes at the former GSK, acronym friendly, London HQ. We're on a roll here. Yeah. So this is developer Hadley Property Group gaining planning for large scale redevelopment on the former GlaxoSmithKline headquarters in Brentford, in West London, and this is just an absolute prime example of the opportunity to get and do things the right way and not just build buildings. I know you were keen to get onto this story, so I'll let you take the lead on this one.
Yeah, it felt very similar to one that we had to have a hasty look back. Let's be completely honest with listeners on the the Earl's Court redevelopment story, which yeah is absolutely it's equally gargantuan. But yeah, this idea of more considered placemaking. I mean, I have a laundry list here of things for me personally to love within this story. So 13-acre sites, the GSK site, 60% of which will be public realm. Well served from an infrastructure point of view. You've got the M4, it's close to Brentford High Street and connections there. As you say, 2,300 homes, including a good proportion of affordable homes. 35% of the mix will be truly affordable. With that, when I say mixed use, 23,000 square meters of what they're calling employment space, and that will include flex units for local businesses, for markets, for events, and so on. So they're already starting to have a think of what that retail mix will look like. Direct connections to Brentford High Street. So one of the things they've said is that while GSK was a good local employer and there were lots of jobs there, it was a closed site. So for many of the local population, you will never have set foot in that space. They want to open that up completely and make sure that
Mhm.
that is properly serving that community. So links to the high street, to local parks, to the River Brent. So again, that public realm is properly considered as well as the retail mix. There's going to be an NHS primary care facility. There's going to be a tech and innovation hub, so startups and so on catered for. One of the thing that first caught my eye, and the reason that I sort of brought this as a story is that reusing existing buildings where possible as well. So this isn't flatten everything and start again, which I know is appropriate in some circumstances. I'm not trying to sort of pan that as a concept. It's courses for courses in that respect. But the fact that they've been able to reuse two fundamental elements of the existing site, including one of the major towers there, which is going to be refurbed for residential. Again, roof gardens, oversized balconies, so good consideration for what living within that space will look like, and obviously being able to reduce embodied carbon quite significantly as well. So ticks across the board as far as I can see. And obviously, the scale of that, the number of employment opportunities and the amount of money that's going to bring back into sector is, yeah, I see nothing but positives on the face of this. So, yeah, well done to Hadley and to everyone else involved.
Absolutely, and there's a really decent thread going through all these three headlines in that within this project, you've got that infrastructure thought process in terms of connecting it with the high street that currently exists and making it open, like you said, which was a previously closed site. It could have been so easy to just have a redevelopment which has shops and amenities and high rise buildings, and not consider how to connect it to the rest
Mhm.
of Brentford.
Completely. We are seemingly, at least in the immediate term, we're not going to get away from that. That flight back into cities and the growth of our urban centres. So, where space is, it sounds slightly ironic given the size of this site, but you're going to be working within a finite footprint given the river is a boundary on one side and Brentford is a built up area around it. So, yeah, there are, where there are these kind of brownfield redevelopment sites, you are at the very least penned in even within a big site. So, yeah, I think this, the Hammersmith and Fulham example that we looked at previously, the Olympia, um, they just look like really good examples of proper placemaking. While there is desire for people and for businesses to be in these areas, how do we make proper best use of that? And yeah, again, start to give urban regeneration a bit of a better name in that respect. There
Yeah.
are horror show examples that you can point to, but as I mentioned earlier, there are also plenty of positive ones as well. So yeah, hopefully we're starting to get that mix right now. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I see nothing but good things with it.
fantastic. That leads us nicely onto our takeaways. I'm going to go first, if you don't mind, this week. Um, my takeaway is thinking about the long term. Construction is long term, and it's got to be. But think about the long term, not just from a numbers point of view financially, but think of the numbers in other aspects. So what do we need to hit those numbers? Because there's a long list of certain things that we need to hit those big numbers that we all see as headlines. So it's plan for the future, but make sure you have something underneath that that means you can actually achieve that.
Yeah. No, it's a really good shout. I think, and, it's on my brain anyways, pertinent to a project that I'm working on at the minute. But on that point of placemaking, don't lose sight of what the ultimate end goal of this is, and that is people living, working, spending time in these places that we're creating. Whether it's housing, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's commercial, whatever the thing is that you're working on. Um, yes, it has to make sense financially. Yes, it has to deliver on other kind of stated goals in order to be viable, etc. But yeah, fundamentally, the reason that we do this is for the betterment of the people that will ultimately interact with these things. So, yeah, when we talk about placemaking, when we talk about providing them, that's what we should be mindful of.
Absolutely. Really good note to end on. End on that. So everybody have a good week. Ryan's off to polish his trophy. Um, again, this is all me, by the way. This is not him.
Yeah,
He's not one for bigging up these things. He just wants to crack on. To be
well,
honest, and I'm the one that's for. Go on.
not least because the tenner's as much as I can afford, mate. So, yeah, if you think you're getting paid by the plug, then you're sadly mistaken.
Yeah, he's yeah. Right, Ryan's a shrinking violet when it comes to these things. So this is all my doing. He had no idea about any of these things. So yeah, you go and polish your trophy, and I'll see you. I'll see you next.
See you next week. Cheers, mate.